similar kind of was arranged specifically for the DRNB students. So I just wanted to deviate a bit from that presentation. And yeah, so just see the time. Okay. First thing, the problems that we face in medicine or even in the field of neonatal science, they are not solved by they are solved not by giving new information, but by arranging whatever information that we know since long. So very when it comes to analysis. Uh, so yeah, think about this and yeah. Now we all start with a note, positive note, but I just want to start with a negative. So, what are the pitfalls of systematic reviews? One second, I have this thing. Meeting is being recorded. Okay. Yeah. What are the pitfalls of systematic reviews? Mainly four pitfalls that most of the researchers do agree upon. The first thing everyone knows, the apples and the oranges problem. So when you try to do a meta-analysis of, say, an intervention and a comparator uh, of many studies which do not sync together, then you will end up with this problem of apples and oranges, and you will not get any meaningful, relevant result or effect estimate. The second thing that my professor, Sushma ma'am, used to tell regarding uh, the systematic reviews and meta-analysis that have been coming up in the recent years is the garbage in, garbage out thing. So you put in studies with a high risk of bias, poor quality ones. What you get out will be something similar to that. So your results will be suspect. The third thing is referred to as the file drawer. It's not self-explanatory. It is somewhat similar to publication bias, where the researchers tend to cherry pick outcomes or things that are relevant to them, or pick studies that they feel would satisfy their agenda. It goes to the next pitfall, that is the researcher agenda. The modus operandi of a researcher should never come in the way of conducting a research, whether it is a primary research or a secondary research, such as a systematic review. Unfortunately, and humanly, it does happen. Um, just hello, hello. अप्रूवल ऑलरेडी दे दिया. चलो उधर ही आप दे दीजिए. हाँ. I'm really sorry, my wife is away and I had ordered something, so yeah, they are not allowing him inside. And the final thing is the researcher agenda. That is the modus operandi of the researcher should never come in the way of while conducting a research. Unfortunately, it does happen, and it does happen quite frequently. Now, what is the purpose of doing a systematic review or a meta-analysis? There are many purposes. The important thing being to confirm the current practice. Because in neonatology, as many of you know, the evidence certainty behind many of the recommendations or guidelines is low to very low. So we need to keep on updating the evidence. So you might find systematic reviews on a particular topic every published every 3 years or every 4 years to just to see if there are any variations in the practices. And systematic reviews also serve the purpose of identifying new practices. Hello. यार अप्रूवल दे दिया उनको भेज दो अभी अप्रूवल दिया भेज दीजिए प्लीज नहीं मैंने अप्रूवल भेज दिया प्लीज भेज दिया मैं मीटिंग में हूँ प्लीज A202 हाँ yes I'm really sorry yeah wife being away is a very it's a nightmare so and the other thing is if you have conflicting practices, then a systematic review might be a best solution to identify actually which is a good practice. A typical example that I would say is the use of sodium bicarbonate in neonatal resuscitation. The Europeans are strongly for that practice. The North Americans are strongly against the practice. So, how could we answer that question? Maybe through a systematic review. And finally, any clinical practice guideline or recommendations, they are based on a systematic review. So, a systematic review stops I would put it in this way: the last step of a systematic review would be to make a summary of findings table, and then the policymakers go on from there through the grade process to make recommendations or clinical practice guidelines. I don't want to go in detail between the differences between the traditional reviews, the scoping reviews, and systematic reviews. But remember, scoping reviews are coming up like anything. And in the past 3 to 4 years, if you see the scoping reviews published in index journals, they have skyrocketed. Now, first thing in a while conducting a systematic review is to frame a research question and to decide which studies to be included. So all of you know that we follow the format. So P stands for the population, I for intervention, C for comparator or control, and O for outcome. And you also have the ST part as well. That is the study design that you are planning to include. And the time frame of your literature search. Now, there is another interesting aspect while you design a question, apart from the P cost, which is scientifically, is a scientific term, you have another term called finer. So your question should be feasible, it should be interesting, it should be novel, it should be ethical, and it should be relevant to your practice. So many of you might question, what about ethics? Ethics does not apply for evidence synthesis or any form of secondary research, but I'll come to that later. We should accept this fact that until quite recently, most of the research evidence have emancipated from the weird people. Weird in the sense, not really weird, Western, educated, intelligent, rich, and democratic societies. And remember, don't exclude gray literature. It's a practice that is done by many academic societies. Gray literature includes conference abstracts, theses, dissertations which have not been published, and preprints and so on. So I'll come to protocol development and registration. Once you have decided upon your P cost and the inclusion criteria, the next important thing is writing a protocol. And you should always have an a priori analysis plan. I mean, you will find papers where you have post hoc analysis, and post hoc analysis are not taken seriously because of that researcher agenda issue. And registration is important, and you register before starting the process of systematic review. So Prospero is the most commonly used platform for registering systematic reviews, but now they are so overwhelmed that they are not even reviewing the protocols. They are simply giving a go ahead. So you go for other platforms such as the Open Science Framework, the pre-registration services of OSF, or you can publish protocols in journals. Even Prisma has set guidelines, the Prisma P, as to how to publish a protocol in a journal. So protocol development, a priori analysis plan, and registration are vital. So this is the NIHR website, the Prospero website, where you can register your protocol for the systematic review. Now, the a priori analysis plan should constitute the following aspects. How are you going to extract the data, and what data are you planning to extract? What is the effect size metric that you will use? For example, are you going to use risk ratio, or are you going to use mean difference, or standardized mean difference, or odds ratio, etc.? And the most important aspect, the aspect where many people go wrong is selection of whether you're going to do a random or a fixed effects model. Many of them do it post hoc after seeing the heterogeneity, but it is not that way. You should have some knowledge, maybe through a scoping review, about the possible heterogeneity that might exist. And based on that, you should specify a priori whether you're going to go for a random effects model or a fixed effects model. And finally, a mention about subgroup analysis, sensitivity analysis, and meta-regression should also be specified. Literature search. See, there are two types of databases. One is the electronic databases of Medline, Embase, Central, which not only we will get the citations of the articles, and you will have the access to the full text as well. Then you have the citation databases, or the bibliographic databases, where you will, for most of the studies, you will only get the title and abstract, the authors, and the journal and the year when it was published. And while searching, remember, it's not just searching all these databases. As I said before, we need to search for gray literature as well. Forward citation search is something that we always do. What is forward citation searching? So you have included a study. Just see what all other studies have cited the study that you have included. Then you have web searching, that is like Google Scholar or just Google. Then you have, as I said, you can search for dissertations. You can contact authors if you see that a trial is about to get over, or trial has been finished but not published. And then preprints. Then you have medical research platforms such as Ovid, which provides access to all of these so-called bibliographic and electronic databases, and you can also search through that. One good aspect about Ovid is that in one platform you can search multiple databases. If you do not have a medical search platform, then you might have to subscribe for each of these databases, and it's extremely costly. You need an information specialist, and we have been lucky to have an expert, Abdul, in most of our systematic reviews. You should have some basic knowledge about the software that we use to conduct literature search. And remember, at least two authors should do the literature search, and they should be blinded to each other. These are basic stuff. While you are searching for literature, you might have to use Boolean operators, which includes and or not. Then you have medical subject headings of National Library of Medicine. You might have to use truncations like this. If you put neon with a asterisk, it will include many other terminologies. You could use wildcard, which is just putting a question mark. See, randomized can be spelled in the British way or the American way. So this is an example of a wildcard, use of a wildcard in literature search. Now, after you do the search, just see the number of hits that you have got. It should not be too narrow. That means you would have missed many studies. It should not be too broad that you got 15,000 articles to screen. That's quite impossible. So these things will be taken care by your information specialist, because they are trained to do so. They are trained not only in using all these things, they are trained in artificial intelligence as well, which is in a huge way. And once the information specialist gives you the list of studies, go through the first 100 title and abstracts and see if the studies that have been included are relevant to the PCOST that you have already, that the PCOST that you are interested in. Now, these have already explained. So some are the core databases, some are the citation databases like Web of Science, Corpus, Google Scholar. PsycInfo, usually we do not use it in interventions, but we can use, for example, for a question like family presence during research. Definitely PsycInfo has to be searched. Then for dissertations, ProQuest is one database where you can search for dissertations that are not published. And as I said, if you have the time and resources to contact authors, then definitely you have to search the trial platforms like the WHO's ICTRP or the OSF registry or the clinicaltrials.gov. Now, this is one literature search that I had formulated along with Dr. Tapas. We did not have the access to information specialist at that time, but we did do quite a good job, I guess, because the final hits were around 2000. Yeah, someone is not happy, I think. Yeah. So this is one of the software commonly used because it is free of cost. It is I want to just state that I do not have any conflict of interest. So Orion is used by many, but it has many pitfalls. But once you start using it, then you know what are the pitfalls, and then you can overcome those. once you join an academic body, such as that of Cochrane or ILCOR or AHA, then you will get access to Covidence. Covidence is very costly. So, but it's one of the most comprehensive softwares that I have worked with. So when you open Covidence, this is the first page that you will see. So you can see that uh, the first one is import references. So your librarian has given you the list of studies. So you can import them directly. The second step of title and abstract screening, then the full text review, and finally the data extraction. We'll go one by one. So I've expanded all the all the four of them. So this is, I think, yeah, this is one of the ILCOR studies on it's a meta-analysis on prognostication scores. So you can see how many title and abstract screening had to be done. I mean, we had to go for a wide search for this. How many full text reviews were extracted? 212, I think, exactly. And then finally 37 studies were included. Now you can see uh, this, I mean, Covidence generates Prisma automatically. And the other aspect is you can also see who amongst your team they are working and who are sitting idle. Okay. So this is just an example, not of this study or this systematic review. This is an example of the Prisma that the Covidence has generated on its own. And this is the team effort that has been put on. So you can see, because I was involved quite late. If I show the other parameters, I will be way down. I wouldn't have done anything. So I was mainly involved in the full text screening. So, and a very important aspect is that you can include the risk of bias or quality assessment template as well in the Covidence, and you can, and two people can adjudge the risk of bias of each study blinded to each other. And then when there are conflicts, then they will be resolved through discussions or by a senior author. So Covidence is a broad software, costly one. If you do have access to that, do use it. Otherwise, we have to go for what is the second best? Maybe Ryan, I guess. So this is a Prisma. This is the old Prisma format, and the new one has come. Now, next step after you select the studies that fit your inclusion criteria is to extract the data and code the studies. So usually we make the characteristics of included studies table. It is better if you make it in Excel because then you can do the analysis as well. Otherwise, you have to make one in the Excel for the analysis, and then you have to make one in the Word format for publication. Data extraction and coding also includes a risk of bias assessment of each study. So usually risk of bias version 2 of Cochrane is used for RCT, and Robbins I of for observational trials or not trials, sorry, observational studies of intervention. There are other, I'll just quickly go through because these are all talks that we can have independently. There are other tools like CODAS2 for diagnostic test accuracy studies, and you have PROBAST for prognostication model studies. So I have used all four. So PROBAST is the toughest amongst all. Now, once you have done the risk of bias and all those things, now the next step is to synthesize the data. Prior to that, we have to decide whether to synthesize the data or whether we should go for a narrative review. So if you do decide to go ahead and do the data synthesis or meta-analysis, then go ahead. The basics I'll talk about. What is effect size experimental study designs? So usually the effect sizes that we use are mean difference, standardized mean difference, risk ratio, odds ratio, mean, proportions, correlation. These are all one variable measures. You won't have a comparator group, and incidence rate ratios. So most of these, I think, you people are familiar with. Remember, when it comes to risk ratios, you might have to do continuity correction. That is, I mean, if you are using Raman, it doesn't take zero cells or even double zero cells. So you have to add 0.5 or something like that. But with our software, it's not an issue. No, I concentrate on incidence rate ratio because it is something that is not routinely used. So risk ratio and odds ratio do not provide us as to how long it took until the events, for example, mortality or whatever events occurred. The time point is not given. A cross-sectional point of view is taken and the outcome is published. Now, we'll see how incidence rate ratio is calculated. I'll give an example. A study in which examines the mortality of individuals in two groups over 10 years. The odds ratio and risk ratio might be same for the intervention and the comparator, but it might be misleading because over a period of 10 years, many might have passed away in the first year or in the second year, and many might have survived till 9 or 10 years. So that is why time is an important factor in certain kind of studies, especially in adults. So for incident for IRR, you need two things: the concept of percent time and the incident rates between the two groups. This is an example. I hope you can see it. It's just an example. It's not a study. So you have 6 participants. The follow-up time is for 10 years. So each year the participant is evaluated. And if the event, for example, mortality has occurred, it's quite common. These kind of analyses are quite common amongst cancer survivors. So if the event has occurred, the study ends for that affected participants. He is censored out. Now, what is percent time years? It is the total of all. For example, you have two people who survived till 10 years. Then some had survived for, say, 2 years, 4.5, 5.5, 8.5, and so on. So you add all of them together, that will give you 40 years. So that is percent time years. You can also have percent time weeks. If you multiply 40 into, I think, 52 weeks a year, I think. And how many events have happened? 4 people did not complete the 10-year follow-up period. If it is an outcome of mortality, 4 people died. So the event to time ratio is 4/40.1. What does that mean? It means that if you follow 1,000 people for 1 year, 100 would experience the event during that time. So once you calculate the IR, then you have to calculate the incidence rate ratio, which is very easy to calculate. It is the E by T for the treatment group divided by E by T for the control group. You need not calculate all these things manually. The software will do it for you. So that is all about incidence rate ratio or time to event analysis. I just want to stress upon it because these aspects are not often discussed in the context of a meta-analysis. Now, effect size correction. So each study would give you an effect size, a risk ratio, an odds ratio. Sometimes we have to correct that effect size. If you think that there is a bias due to small sample size, then you can use the head gaze G. Okay, that is a statistical thing. If you want to dwell deeper into head gaze G, you can do so. It is usually it addresses small sample bias. Second aspect where effect size correction is required is attenuation or unreliability. That is when outcomes are measured differently or incorrectly. This relates to instruments. For example, vitamin D, levels of vitamin D. There are so many ways of doing it. So if they have not used the latest technology or done it in in an older fashion, then you have to address unreliability as well. Next is range restriction. A very difficult thing to explain actually. I'll give you an example. If you are trying to correlate a person's age with his cognitive capacity, for example, in a population of more than 65 years old, a very relevant thing in US elections now. So if one study has used more than 65 means it could be, it could include people until 100 years. But if a study has included only people of age group 65 to 69, then that will not actually give a correct estimate of what you actually want to study, because you are not included people in their 70s, 80s and all. That is when you need to do the range restriction correction, right? I hope I'm not talking some hi-fi stuff. The next important stuff, which is quite relevant in neonatal studies, is double counting or unit of analysis problem. For example, in a 3-armed RCT, intervention A, intervention B, and a control group are there. And how will you analyze it in a pairwise meta-analysis? So you can analyze like A versus B as one, B versus C as one, and A versus C as one, and then do the meta-analysis. But that is wrong. That is called double counting. So the various ways to address this. The simplest way is to combine the event rates and the sample size of A and B and compare with the control. So this is the simplest way, and it's been agreed upon by many statisticians. Now, coming to meta-analysis, it's a 2-stage process. In the first stage, you will take the summary statistics of each study. The second stage is when you do the meta-analysis, where you calculate the weighted average of the intervention effects that have been estimated in these individual studies. The usual method that is used is the generic inverse variance method. It means that the larger the study, the larger the weightage is given, because the standard error of the study will